shaped by narratives. And we're going to deal a lot today with story and questions around the stories that have shaped who you are, the person that you showed up as in this room, and what are the narratives and life experiences that created your reality. So on this topic of race and reconciliation, as I was saying, each and every one of us is the sum total of a set of stories, life experiences, that have shaped who you are in this very moment. Things that were said to you when you were growing up, things that were not said to you. Because for some of us, it's not simply the things that were said, it's also the things that were not said that we needed to hear. The life experiences, specifically in your family, that shaped your identity. The things you were told that you could do, that you could not do, how smart you were, how beautiful you were. All of the positive experiences and then also the negative experiences. They shape our identities, and they then begin to influence how we live out our lives in the world. So for me, as you saw in the video, what that looked like was growing up in a poor community. We moved all the time. I went to a different school every year of my life until 11th grade when I went to live with my dad. Most of my childhood experience was dealing with a lot of challenges, specifically around the economics of poverty. And then my mom became a substance abuser, which out of that abuse led to verbal abuse, things constantly being told what I couldn't do, who I could not become, very negative language. And then it being in an environment that looked like I could not do things. The places and spaces around me said that this is about as good as it's going to get. The times when I panhandled to get home from school because my mom would give me $3, and then I knew that when she gave me $3, that was not enough for lunch. It was $1.50 to get home and $1.50 to get to school. So if I chose to eat lunch, I had to ask people for change. And there were days when I would get far enough away from the school so that my friends couldn't see me and start asking people for change. And I remember very vividly the people who would cross the street when they saw me, the people who would look away as if they never saw me, the people who would look at me with disdain as if, how dare you ask people for money. But I also remember very vividly the people who would look me in the eyes and simply ask, how much do you need? It was $1.50, but that $1.50 would cost me my self-confidence and my self-worth. It took years to overcome that set of beliefs that were ingrained in me through social interaction, through my young adult years or my childhood years, the things that my mom said and didn't say, the experiences of growing up, the experiences around my community, the experiences of how I was treated by other people, had an impact on my identity, the same way that your experiences, even though they were not like mine, they have impacted your beliefs about yourself, how you feel about other people, your understanding of can people be trusted? Your answer to that question is rooted in a set of beliefs. Are people inherently good? Your answer to that is rooted in a set of beliefs and life experiences. And so those childhood experiences with our family members, with our parents, with our aunts and uncles and cousins, and where we grew up, shape the very foundation of who you are right now. And the challenge is, oftentimes we accept these things as true about ourselves without ever even questioning them. Without ever even saying, is that true for me? So you embrace them growing up. And then you become an adult and still living into those inherited beliefs about yourself, those experiential beliefs about yourself, and even as an adult, never questioning, is that really true for me? Are people not trustworthy? Are people not genuinely good? Did I ever even think to question that based on my own experiences? When they said I wasn't good enough or wasn't smart enough, why did I never question that? When they said I wasn't attractive, why didn't I ever question that? I used to think I was the ugliest kid in the neighborhood. Because girls, when you're young and dating, nobody wanted to date me. I realized later that I was not ugly. I was poor and my clothes didn't look right. They just didn't like my clothes. And I realized, you know what? I'm cute. And if all this is about is clothes, I just need to get a job. I can fix that. But I had these beliefs about myself that based on how other people treated me. And I accepted them as true until, wait a minute, I said, maybe it's not. Maybe I am good enough. And what would change if I decided to believe that I am? What would change in your life now if you decided to believe something positive about yourself? What would you go out and do if you believed you were smart enough, if you were good enough, if other people could be trusted, if people were genuinely good? How would it change your behavior, your thoughts and actions when you interact with other people? So before we can even get into a conversation around race and reconciliation, the first thing we have to do is reconcile our identities and align who you think you are with who God says you are. Because you showed up today with a set of beliefs. And you showed up with an abiding faith. And in some ways, our beliefs about people are not in alignment with our biblical narrative and our faith. This morning, my phone is still broke. If anyone in here works for Apple, can you see me during the break? It froze up. And I had to do something that I haven't done in at least 20 years. I had to pull over at a gas station and ask for directions. It was the most bizarre thing. I had multiple flashbacks to my childhood when we rode around with maps and notes. And I was like, oh my God, it still works. And people will give you directions. But what was interesting, and I was like, okay, God, I don't know what you're trying to teach me right now. On my way to a conversation around race and reconciliation, I stop at a gas station. And I could have had all kind of assumptions about the guy at the gas station. He did not look like me, not only culturally, but in any way. He looked like the guy who works at the gas station and knows how to fix cars. And I could have thought, this guy's probably not going to help me. Maybe he doesn't even have a phone with a map on it. Because what I'm really hoping for is some Google map directions. And I walk in, and he's like, what can I help you with? I said, I'm trying to get to Annandale United Methodist. He pulls out his iPhone, and he plugs in the address, and then I'm thinking, okay, error number one, he just proved me wrong. And then there was a guy from India, and he says, where are you trying to go? And I'm like, he has it, but thank you very much. So all around me, I'm dealing with other cultures and my own internal assumptions. He gives me directions, and I said, okay, he said, let me walk outside and show you, because it's not as easy as it seems, because this is a service road. You're going to have to get onto the other road. You're going to drive down the street. Then you're going to make a left on this other street. And I'm like, okay, he's gone even further than I thought he would. My assumptions about him was that he wasn't even going to help me, because I didn't look like him and he didn't look like me, and I am a bald-headed black guy with tattoos from California, and I'm in Virginia. All kinds of assumptions swirling around that were not true for me in my present moment. Then I get to a light, and I get to, when you get to Annandale, there's it dead ends, and you have to make a left to get to the church. It's like 2 blocks down. I was at the light, and I'm like, okay, I don't see a sign. An Asian lady was taking out her trash. I'm like, here we go again. Excuse me, ma'am, is this, I can't even remember this, what is this street out here? Columbia Pike? She said, yes, where are you trying to go? I said, Annandale United Methodist. She said, it's actually right around the corner. Totally eliminated all of my assumptions that this Asian lady was not going to know where Annandale United Methodist was. So, but I was my thoughts and my assumptions were rooted in a set of inherited narratives, not my experiences. My inherited narratives around people from India and from Asia were that they're not going to help you. They don't like people like you. My experience has never been that. My inherited narratives around people of majority culture was like, they don't like you. They're not going to trust you. My experiential narrative, the first time I encountered racism, was at about 8 o'clock in the morning. I was around 10 years old. And my mom was asleep. And I wanted some baseball cards. Not so much for the cards, but also for the gum that came in the package. And so I made my way down to the corner store. And I bought my baseball cards. And I always liked cards that had lefties in there. Anybody remember Raleigh Fingers? I love left-handed pitchers. And even in football, I love left-handed quarterbacks. Bob Greasy. Anybody remember Bob Greasy? I loved all those guys, lefties. And I'm leaving the store. And the garbage man is there. And they're taking out the trash and they're dumping it in the big compactor. And it's blocking the sidewalk because they're pulled into a driveway. And I look, and you know, I'm like a little kid. Garbage trucks are kind of scary because they're big, they're loud, they stink. And the guy looks at me and he says, "What are you looking at, you little N-word? I'll put you in this compactor." And I froze. I'd never heard that before. And what I didn't understand was, why did he say that to me? I'm just going to get some baseball cards and some gum. And I went home, terrified. My mom was still asleep. I never mentioned it. That was my first experiential narrative with racism. As a little kid, I didn't understand why. But it was not the end of my story. When I was at Duke, I met Doug Tanner. Doug Tanner is a Duke alum. He gave me my first job at the Faith and Politics Institute on Capitol Hill. I've met many people. Richard Rohr, just a year ago, I sent Richard Rohr a letter. He was still battling prostate cancer, and I didn't even know it. And all I wanted to do was talk to him on the phone. He emailed me back on Christmas Eve, and he said, "Yours was the first letter I read. Here's the thing, I just came back from battling prostate cancer. I'm going to start inviting people to visit in January. We can talk by the phone, or you can fly in a day early, and I'll spend an entire day with you, one-on-one, if you're willing to do that." I'm like, oh my God, like Richard Rohr is going to spend a whole day with me. Of course I'm flying in. He did not know me. He does not look like me. We do not share culture. Doug Tanner, who gave me my first job, who's my mentor, who's in the book that you read, taught me everything I need to know about prayer and meditation and working on Capitol Hill with both sides of the aisle and simply loving people, not judging people. So the question sometimes for us is, through your inherited and experiential narratives, which story are you choosing to believe and why? Which story? Because the story you choose to believe, you benefit from. The narrative you accept as true, you have to ask yourself, why have I accepted this narrative, and how do I benefit from it? And does my narrative, my beliefs about other people, my beliefs about myself, do they align with the biblical imperative? God so loved the world. Not God so shamed the world or judged the world. God so loved the world. Am I aligning with who I am, with who God is and who God has called me to be? Do I see people through my inherited and experiential narratives? The things that my parents told me are true, my uncles and aunts said are true, and I said, yes, they are. And so I have decided that in spite of what God says, and in spite of who God has called me to be, I benefit from this story. And if I free myself from this story, there is the risk of being hurt. If I risk loving everybody, I'm in jeopardy of being hurt. This story keeps me safe, but it also denies me freedom. I have learned that there have been times when I have gone before God in earnest prayer with tears in my eyes, petitioning God for breakthroughs over different things in my life at different times. And I learned several years ago that on numerous occasions, God was seeking to answer those prayers. But my inherited and experiential narrative, the stories that I accepted as true about other people, that when God was trying to answer prayer, I could not receive it because it was coming from someone who did not look like me. And I thought God's blessing had to come through something familiar, someone familiar, some environment that was familiar. And I had to look like me. They had to sound like me. They had to relate to my story. And yet God was moving. But the story I was holding on to was saying, that can't be my blessing. It's unfamiliar. Those aren't my people. And yet God was saying, but they're mine. And they are part of the body. And that means you're amongst them, and I'm amongst all of you. So what you have to do is lay down this story and surrender it to me. Perhaps for some of us, the starting point is not with the issues, not with the assumptions, not with the fears, not with the anger. It's not the starting point. The starting point is surrender. So often in life we fight. And God never said fight. God said the battle is not yours. So maybe our healing, our redemption, our connection, our freedom to truly be the body is not in fighting, but first in surrender. First in humble submission. God, I have fears, I have doubts, I am angry, I have assumptions that I've never brought to you. I have beliefs about other people that I've never brought to you. And I have held on to them because I have benefited. They've protected me. And Lord, I surrender them to you. And if I'm honest, this is scary too. Because my surrender to you, Lord, means that I have to trust you with this. That you will allow me to see you in every person, that you will begin to redeem my thoughts and beliefs first, Lord, about myself.